Hello everybody, Captain Cody here from globalfishingreports.com. Today we're going to be talking about how to make shark rigs. This one we have single strand wire, 124 pound, number 10 with a Nano VMC hook. On this one we have a nylon coated multi-strand cable with a big 16-aught circle hook. I'm going to show you how to tie a haywire twist using this AFW haywire twist tool to make shark rigs, and I'm also going to show you how to tie haywire twists by hand without using the tool. We're going to talk about what size wire you actually need to catch sharks. We have this rig made on 124 pound shark wire, and then we have these smaller rigs made on number 4 38 pound wire, and these are used on the reef to catch king mackerel, cero mackerel, barracuda, and wahoo. And then we're going to talk about what are the best size hooks to use. This is a big 16-aught circle hook. This is a 14-aught circle hook. This is a 9-aught circle hook. Which one is the safest to use for the sharks? So we're going to talk about which size hooks to use and also which size swivels to use to put on the end of the rigs. All right, let's talk about the fishing gear we use to make these shark rigs. This is a 14-0 stainless steel circle hook. So stainless steel doesn't have the strength as carbon steel, but it's more corrosion resistant. That's why these circle hooks are thick. They have to be this thick so that they don't bend whenever they're stainless steel. These are the hooks that I recommend for catching sharks that are under 6 feet long. This is a Nano VMC thin wire hook. These are actually the best tarpon hooks on the market. They're really, really good. And they might even make them a little bit bigger than this. That would actually be good for sharks as well. And this is just a Mustad, also a thin wire. This is an 8.0. They make them a little bit bigger, but it's basically the same thing. It's just Mustad's version. Both of these types of hooks are actually carbon steel, so they're actually really strong for their thickness, but they're not corrosion resistant on their own, so that's why they put this corrosion resistant black coating on them. So if you're shark fishing and you're gonna leave, or you might possibly leave the hook in the shark, it's a good idea to use this type of hook, but then scratch that coating so that it will rust away rather quickly, as opposed to using a stainless hook, which won't rust away nearly as quickly. Now, these are the two types of swivels that I use for making shark rigs and making rigs for the reef. These are what I use for shark rigs. They're 475 pound test. They come in a 12 pack. They're actually really cheap and they're plenty strong, so that's all you need. And these other ones are size 12, 85 pound test. And these are good because reef fish are going to be a lot more picky. And in clear water, you want to have a really, really small swivel on there so that they don't see your rig. Alright, now I'm going to show you how to make the shark rig. This is how the wire comes. It just comes in a spool. It comes in either brown or it comes in silver. I actually prefer silver, but both work. This is actually camo brown. If you're fishing in New Jersey or you're fishing some green and brown water, this is probably the better color, but down in Florida the water's clear, so something silvery or white is more likely to be transparent to the fish, kind of reflecting some of that water. I'm going to pull off about 6 feet of wire to make the rig. I'm 6'4", so we got 6'4" foot of wire. I'm just going to take it and clip it off. Now you always tie the swivel end first, so I just have one of those Bill Fisher swivels. Slide it on, and the first thing you do is you bend this back on itself. So you bend it 180 degrees, just like so. And then you're going to pinch the swivel with your right hand, right at the swivel. Pinch that, and then you bend this line back. And now you're going to get ready to make your first twist. This is a twist, this isn't a wrap. So you're not just taking this line and wrapping it, but you're actually taking these two lines together and you're going to twist them. That's why it's called a haywire twist. So we're going to pinch these as close to the swivel as we can to make it look nice and pretty, and then we're going to twist. And we're going to twist about 5 or 6 times. There you go, you can see we got probably 5 twists in there. And then I usually take this swivel and I sort of rotate it sideways and I grab a hold of it so that I have a little more leverage as I'm twisting this next part. And now you actually do bend this 90 degrees, and we're going to do about 5 wraps this way as well. So now we're just going to take it and wrap it 90 degrees on itself. And you're going to try and go right back down on the wire so that there's not any space. And with this heavy wire, it's actually pretty easy. Sometimes it's actually more difficult with thin wire. But the most important thing is that the wraps, or at least that the last wrap, is touching the wire. So you see how those are nice and close? So this next wire is touching this wire. That makes it so that whenever I bend it back and forth, that makes a nice stress point so that the wire just snaps off easily. So now I'm just going to bend this wire all the way forward and then all the way back, and I'm just going to do this until it breaks, which usually with 3 or 4 bends, maybe 5 or 6 bends, that pops off. So now we have the Haywire Twist onto our swivel. Alright, we've just attached the swivel to the wire, and now we're going to go to the opposite side of the single strand wire, and we're going to do the same thing, but this time we're going to attach the Nano VMC hook. So we'll just run the wire right through the hook, and we'll bend the wire back on itself pretty strongly so that it's all the way kind of bent back on itself, like so. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to grab really close to this hook with our fingers, and we're going to pinch this so that we can rotate it easy. Now we're going to pinch this down nice and close for our first rotation. Make that first twist. And this time you can see we actually have the hook to apply leverage, which actually makes it even easier. Because the hardest part is actually pinching the swivel or pinching that hook to get leverage for your twist. Now that we got 5 or 6 twists, that one is spaced out a little bit, but it's going to be perfectly fine. It'll still hold. And now you're going to take it 90 degrees and you're going to do about 5 wraps. You can see we're trying to get as close as we can to the previous wrap. So that's why you're pretty much just pulling it straight back down on itself as you do this. Realistically, you could probably do 2 wraps, you can do 10 wraps. Doesn't really matter, just how pretty you want to make it look. And now we're going to bend this back and forth to break it off. And now you can see, you can sort of straighten this out if you want, if it's bent. Now you can see we got our hook attached with a nice 6-foot leader. So this is good to go to catch a nice big 6-foot or smaller shark, except we haven't smashed the barb down. Alright, so this is a Nano VMC circle hook, and you can see that it has a barb. You could take a file and remove the barb, but the easiest way to remove a barb is just actually to smash it with a pair of pliers that you have. So I just have a regular hand pliers, and I'm just going to take it and squeeze as hard as I can. Maybe rub it back and forth as I do it. And you can see that that barb is, at a minimum, it's smashed down and nice and smooth. Most of the time it actually falls off. But now you're fishing with a circle hook without a barb. Now I did say that the shark rig that we made was done, but I was actually wrong. We did pinch the barb, but it's actually good to take a file and scratch this coating off of the hook in a couple locations. So I'm not going to do it on the boat because I don't want to get coating all over it and I'm going to have to wash the boat. But that's what you do. You just take this file and you rub it back and forth, and you'll rub this coating that's on this carbon steel hook, and if you accidentally or something happens where you have to leave this hook in the shark, it's going to rust away much faster using this carbon hook with the coating removed than using one of those big 14 or 16 aught circle hooks that are stainless steel, that are super thick, and are not going to rust out of the shark very quickly. But now you can see we have a completed shark rig, and to store this, you actually just grab it right by the hook and you'll coil it up. And you actually don't need a rubber band or anything to hold it. Once you're done, you just run that through itself 2 or 3 times, and now you can store that. If you want to use it again, you just have to undo the wraps you just did. 1, 2, 3, and the whole thing will just spring open. Alright, now we're going to tie a haywire twist on this number 38-pound wire to make a reef rig. And for a reef rig, we don't want it to be super long. We're probably going to make it about 18 inches to 2 feet. I'll make it kind of short just for the example. So we just cut that right off of our spool of wire. And again, the first thing you put on is going to be the swivel. And as you can see, this is a tiny swivel, which actually makes it more difficult. This thinner wire is actually harder to twist than thicker wire is for the most part. So you slide your swivel on, and we're going to do the exact same process we did for the thick wire, where we bend this back on itself at, 180 degrees. And we're going to pinch it so that it's got a nice U in it. Now once we have that nice U, we're going to do the same thing we did before, where we're going to grab this swivel with our right thumb and index finger. So now that we got a hold of that, we're going to do the twist part of the haywire twist. So we're going to do 5 or 6 twists. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. Usually I do this real quick because I'm making a whole bunch of them. 6, 7. So now we have our twist in it. Now we're going to bend this 90 degrees, and we're going to do about 5 twists this way. Same thing as before, where we're trying to go right back onto itself, but not the opposite direction, because then it won't break off correctly and you'll have wire doubled up. So we're just trying to make 5 twists as close to the other one as possible. That's 4 or 5. Now we're just going to bend this wire back and forth to break it off. A lot of fancy people can, once they got it started, they can sort of bend it and twist it to break it off. But the easiest way, most consistent way to break it off is just to bend it back and forth, as I was showing you there. So now we got our swivel. Now we're going to apply this little 5/0 hook. And this is actually a little bit longer than I usually use, just by a few inches, but it's going to work. So now we'll put the hook through, and we're going to do the exact same thing, except for now we'll have a little more leverage to hold this as we twist, because now we have this hook to sort of apply pressure to the wire. So this will actually be easier on the hook end. Well, it should be easier. You can sort of see how I'm using it for leverage there. And then we're going to do about 5 twists. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's the twist. So this line, as you can tell, it's probably a little bit less than 90 degrees apart. Actually, it's probably closer to 45 degrees apart as I'm taking it and I'm twisting it. Now we're going to take that wire, and we are going to bend it so that it's 90 degrees. And now we're going to wrap it 5 times. 1, 2, yeah. Each time you do it, it's not a full wrap. So it's about a half wrap each time. But realistically, only 2 or 3 wraps will hold it. You can do 10 wraps, make it look fancy. But the most important thing is that the wraps are tightly close together. Otherwise, it's not going to break off easy. If you have it so that it's sort of like spun across and they're not close together, that wire is not going to break when you bend it back and forth. But in this case, they're pretty close together, so this wire should break after bending it back and forth 3 or 4 times. Or 5 or 6 times. There we go. And you never want to cut that wire, because if you cut the wire, then it's going to poke your hands. But this is nice and smooth, so if you happen to rub your finger on it, it's not going to cut your finger. You can see the completed rig now. This is the Haywire Twist 1, and this is the Haywire Twist 2 on just a small hook. And it's actually good to have anywhere from 3 to 20 of these made up in advance, and you can save them anywhere you want. That way, if you catch a fish, this wire a lot of times will get twisted. You catch one barracuda, you catch one kingfish. During the dehooking process, this wire is going to get bent and you're going to want to replace it. So you're not going to want to sit there and try and be tying these during prime fishing time, especially if you have clients on the boat. It's just not something you want to be doing because you're going to have enough to deal with. So it's a good idea to make up maybe 100 of these so that you're always ready to go fishing on the reef. And even though this is a small rig, this will catch huge kingfish, huge barracuda, it'll catch wahoo. Just make sure that whenever you're fighting the fish, to not apply a ton of drag. Those type of fish, they're gonna run as fast as they can no matter how much pressure you have on them, and they're gonna tire themselves out. So during the first minute or two of the fight, have less than 10 pounds of drag on the fish and just let them run. And then once they start to get tired out, then you can increase the drag and you can pull the fish in. Rather than using these little teeny swivels, if you are tying on to mono, there actually is a knot that I show in my 7 fishing knots every captain should know YouTube video that actually shows you how to tie your wire to mono, and it just makes it a little bit more streamlined. If I'm fishing just by myself, I'll probably tie that particular knot, but if I'm running a boat and I'm trying to tie hooks for 6 people, I'll have a lot of these pre-rigged up in advance, and if somebody catches a fish and this wire is all messed up, I'll just cut it and tie on another rig really quickly so that we get as many lines in the water as possible. This rig here is very similar to the rig we just made, except for on the end I tied a 1/16 ounce jig for the hook. So now you can attach a pinfish, a pilchard, or a greenback, or whatever type of bait you have, chunk of ballyhoo, and you can throw this out, and this is actually going to sink. And depending on the current, if there's a lot of current, this might only go down 5 feet. If there's no current, this might go all the way to the bottom. If there's average current, this might be sitting down 10 to 20 feet. And that's actually where a lot of fish hang out. So this little rig right here, fishing the mid-depth, will actually catch a ton of fish. So I definitely recommend whenever you go fishing and you pull up to a reef that you fish multiple lines. You have one up on top, you have this one mid-depth, and you have one fishing the bottom. That way you're covering the whole water column. So here is that particular jig, 1/16 ounce Mustad Ultra Point jig. This is the hook I was just talking about. It is a 5/0 Mustad circle hook. And these are the little teeny swivels that we rig that up with. These are actually 85-pound test swivels. Even though they're really, really small, they're still actually plenty strong, stronger than the wire. So that's all that you really need. Alright, now I'm going to show you how to use this tool, which is actually a Haywire Twist tool. It's used for twisting this wire. This is number 10, 124-pound wire. I found that this tool works pretty good using this thickness wire. I tried thinner wire. I tried number 4, 38-pound wire, and this tool did not work very well. It kind of unraveled the wire. So I'm going to show you it working with wire that I consider it to work pretty good with. And the first thing you do is there's actually 2 slots here, or 2 things that stick out. This is actually made out of a piece of milled aluminum, it looks like. It's actually pretty well built. It costs about 20 bucks. But the first thing you do is you have enough wire sticking up here like this, and it's actually sticking out through, and then you're actually going to slide your swivel down the top and make sure you have enough wire sticking out, because if you have too short a wire, it's actually not going to work for the whole twist. And then you push this down, and this tool actually works pretty good if you've done a Haywire Twist before. If you've never done a Haywire Twist, I recommend just doing them by hand first so you learn how to do it. But basically what this does is it makes it so that you have something to hold on to whenever you're twisting your wire. But you're going to twist it to the right, but this wire has to be underneath that little lip there. And you're going to pull it pretty close, hold on to the swivel like you normally would so you have some leverage, and then you're just going to rotate this clockwise. You're going to do 6 or 7 wraps. That's actually pretty good. Then you're going to remove the tool from the wire, like so. So we have a couple twists in there. Maybe we could have done a couple more, but then you bend this 90 degrees, and there's actually 2 holes through this. There's one that goes vertical, and there's one that is just a hole going through the thin part of the device. Now you're actually going to hook this through that little hole of the device. And now you're going to sort of make sure that that wire is underneath those little lips. And now you're going to do the exact same thing we just did. You're going to twist this clockwise. And this is going to make your wraps rather than your twists. So we'll just make 5 or 6 of these wraps. And it actually makes these wraps look really nice. Not that it's that hard to do without the tool, but just without much thinking about it, you're already always 90 degrees from the wire. So just going to make some really nice looking wraps. Now we're going to take this off. So we took that off. And now we're almost done. Just like normal, we're going to bend this back and forth. And actually, I had way too much wire. I didn't need to have this much excess, but I've only used this tool a few times, so I didn't know exactly how much wire to have coming through. The other times I did it, I didn't have enough, so at the very end I had just a little teeny tiny piece. But that's step 1, and now we'll do the exact same thing for the hook end. Break that back and forth, and you can see that's really not that pretty of a haywire twist, but I've only used the tool to make 3 or 4 of these, so I'm by no means an expert with demonstrating the tool, but I figured I would give it a shot to show you guys how it worked. In general, I would say I would just tie haywire twist without using the tool, but it was interesting to try this just to see how it works. I'm curious if you guys know any better way to tie haywire twists in bulk other than just tying them by hand.